Well, hello. I want to say thank you, chat, for joining another live stream. And I have a very special guest that I'm glad that she reached out, or I reached out, and she accepted the offer to be on the live stream. She's a great person. We started YouTube about the same time, and has plenty of great knowledge when it comes to worm farming. So, with no further ado, let me introduce Whitey Worms and Garden. How is it going?
Oh, hi. I always laugh whenever I hear you call my name because you say Whitey, but it's actually White Davy. But I always get a good laugh.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I always have people mispronounce it because
One
it's not
second.
very popular, right? It's not very popular because it's my maiden name plus
There
my
you go.
married
So, yeah,
name.
I apologize for saying your name wrong. But let's go ahead and get this party started. You've been worm farming. Let the chat know a little bit about your journey on how you got started.
Um, I grew up in Jamaica. That's where I was born. So after moving to Canada as an adult, I've been gardening in Jamaica and I'm used to gardening all year round. Moving to Canada and in the coldest part at that, Saskatchewan, the growing season was like 3 to 4 months. And I don't believe in chemical fertilizer, so I always compost. So in 2016, I was standing in front of my compost bin, knee high in snow, and I'm wondering, why is it that every day I have to go to work, come home, look after the family, go back out into the garden, and spend 2 days a week turning compost to wait a whole year before I can harvest compost? So I started thinking there must be some other way to do it faster. So that is when I started doing some research and I stumbled upon worm farming. Never heard of it before. So I was like, what? I can have compost in just 6 months? So I started searching around my community online to see if I could find anyone who was supplying worms. And thankfully, I was able to find one lady. But she said she wasn't selling worms until June. And that was March when I reached out to her. So when the date come, the first day she opened, I ordered my worm and she delivered it. And so she told me the bin was outside, so I was putting them directly in my compost because I didn't know anything about worm farming. I didn't know that they couldn't be outdoors; they had to be indoors in the region where I lived. So she put them in my compost bin, and the compost bin is made from pallet, and it is 4 feet wide, 4 feet high, 4 feet long, and the bin was full of compost. So she told me, okay, in 3 months, your worms are going to multiply and double their population. I was like, wow, that sounds exciting. You want to take a guess how much worms I had at the end of 2.5 months when it got too cold for the worms to be outside and I harvested them? How many worms do you think I had?
I'm going to say 3,000. Am I wrong?
I had, from the 1 pound of worms in 2.5 months, I had 20 pounds of worms.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. And you want to hear the crazy part?
Go ahead.
I didn't know how to separate them from the castings. So I had to unpick
Okay.
all 20,000 of them out. It took me a whole month.
Oh my gosh. No way.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. And what kind of worms? What kind of worms were these again that you started
Re-
out with?
Red wigglers.
What? Okay, okay. That's
Yeah,
a
those.
lot of worms. So, what type of bedding? What type of bedding were they in when you first started out?
Well, when I started out, I knew nothing about bedding. The only thing she told me was that they need moisture, they need air, they need food, and that was it. And they
Okay.
couldn't live out in the cold, so I had to harvest them and bring them indoors. So that was all I knew. But thankfully, I the material, the bin was full right all the way to the top with some material was already partially composted, and some of it was fresh food scraps and material from the garden. So because some of it was partially composted already, and I
Mhm.
had a lot of dried leaves in there as well, so it naturally had bedding. And that leads to a very funny story
Okay.
regarding the bedding. When I harvested
Mm.
the worms, I brought them indoors and I bought two 76-liter totes and I put 10 pounds in one, 10 pounds in other. And the only thing that went into those two bins, apart from the worms and moisture, was the food I was feeding them. I didn't know about how much to feed them, but they
Okay.
had enough
Okay.
food. But I knew nothing about
Yeah.
bedding, so they had no bedding, just food scraps. They finish it, they get more. That was it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now here's the sad part.
So, okay.
And that was the end of September when I finished harvesting them. By the end of March the following year, I had 4 pounds of worms, not 20, not more. Because
I hear you.
worms worms need space, they need the bedding, and they didn't have any. But I didn't know that. So that was the
Yeah,
biggest mistake I've ever made with worms.
I understand. So, how did you know? Okay, first of all, your worms must have died because of they drowned, I'm guessing, with all the food scraps in there and no bedding. And the
They
second
didn't
question
have
is, what made you finally realize about the bedding?
good question. Um, it was actually years later when I realized when I figure out the bedding because when I started it was 2016 and there was no YouTube video. There was five, literally five YouTube videos that you could find online at that point in time. And those videos were just show and
Hmm.
tell. They weren't really teaching you, they weren't really sharing tips that you could benefit from. So, because of that, I had to figure everything out on my own. The only good thing is that because I'm constantly composting, the compost that I was feeding them served as bedding.
Okay, okay, okay. So, what do you use now as bedding? What is your go-to bedding that you
Well,
use?
for bedding, at the moment, I am using dried leaves and I'm also using shredded cardboard. So, it's mostly shredded cardboards with dried leaves. But
Hmm.
because I do it on a commercial level, then I have to be careful of any material that I take from outside to put into my worm bin because where I live now, the environment is very damp because it's a rainy environment. So I have to be careful because there's all sorts of different composting worms naturally in the soil outside. So in order to use whether it is grass clippings or dried leaves or any form of plant debris from outside, I have to go through two steps. One, after I harvest it, I have to boil a nice big pot of water and soak the bedding once, sift it off, and repeat the process to ensure that if there is slugs, if there is any different type of worms, they all die so that I don't end up with mixed species.
Okay, I hear you. So, when it comes to worms, you have red wigglers, and also did you raise European night crawlers? Did you have
Yes,
those?
I
Or
have.
okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes, I have European night crawlers as well. So those are the only two worms that I sell though. I had African night crawlers as well, but once I moved to this location, it
Oh,
doesn't get hot enough for them to do well here. Here, the temperature would be around 15,
okay,
that's maybe 17, but because of the humidity, sometimes it feels hotter, but it wasn't hot enough for the African night crawlers. And I also have Canadian night crawlers, but I don't sell those, they're just fishing purpose.
so on average, how big are Canadian night crawlers, and how do you take care of those worms?
You know, I've had these guys for, I'd say, nearly 3 years. I still haven't figured it out yet because I don't spend much time
Okay.
on them. I have a big bin, put them in there, and with soil and bedding. And occasionally I give them food scraps because they mostly feed on grass and plant debris, right? So I don't really do much with them. So whatever rate they want to multiply, sometimes 2 months, 3 months, I don't even touch them. So I can't say I know how to raise them. I wouldn't be able to teach you how to raise them. But they grow big because they can get as
Yeah. Yeah,
thicker
I don't
than the
think
size of a
in,
pencil,
in Iowa, I don't think, okay.
and they can be up to 8
Oh,
inches
in
long.
Iowa, I don't think we have access to oh, okay. That's a nice sized worm. They scare me because they're big, and in Iowa, I keep getting buffered. I apologize, but it's hard to have access to Canadian night crawlers. Where I live, the worms that thrive where I'm at are either the red wigglers, the European night crawlers, and the mixture of the blue worms that are in our bands. But they say
Okay.
African night crawlers, they have to have perfect temperatures. So I would never have the opportunity for those worms, which they're nice looking worms, they're big. But I kind of wish I could try African night crawlers out, but that's not gonna happen. But yeah, but European night crawlers, like I said, they're big and they just scare me. They're like look like one of those jumper worms that we have in Iowa or
Okay.
Texas or Alabama, whatever. Yeah. So, out of all the worms you raised, which one was the easiest you think for you?
I would say the red wigglers and the European night crawlers are neck and neck. Yeah, I think the
Okay.
two of them are on the
Okay.
same level. For me, that is.
So, what? So, out of the two worms that you sell, which one is your most sold worms out of the Africans? I mean, the Europeans and the red wigglers.
The red wigglers are the biggest sellers, and I think mostly because it is the most popular one. That's what most people hear about. So now European Nightcrawler is taking its stand in the market, but initially it was just the red wigglers that everyone would talk about. So naturally, when you say worms, people start to think red wigglers. It is when you mention European nightcrawlers, or if someone is thinking about fishing, then people start to think European nightcrawlers. But I find something interesting. I accidentally created a mixed bin with European nightcrawlers and red wigglers. And what I find is that the bin that has the mixed European and red wigglers tend to process the food scraps much faster than just pure red wigglers or pure European nightcrawlers.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the reason that is because I think like the Europeans prefer like the cardboard over the food scraps. That's just my opinion, my research.
Mhm.
Because like to say African night crawlers, they say those worms love cardboard. They would eat that more over the food scraps. But yeah, red wigglers, they definitely love the vegetable scraps compared to the European the European night crawlers. And that's why I like to have a worm bin with different worms in it too, because you can definitely see the results of the worms that eat stuff faster compared to each other. Ben, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I agree. I agree because I noticed that if I use the same type of bedding, so the leaves and the grass clippings and the shredded cardboard for the worms, for the European night crawlers, and for the red wrigglers, the material in the European nightcrawler bin, because it is mostly carbon source, they process it a lot faster than the red wrigglers. Whereas if it is nitrogen source, as you say, then the red wrigglers tend to do better that way. And I think another reason why they do so well is
Someone had a
each of them
question
have.
for you. I'm sorry, you were talking about boiling you use boiled water to kill any worms or bugs in the bedding.
Mhm,
And this guy wanted to
mhm.
ask a question. He had a question about what you were saying, if you could explain it to him.
Okay, so in my region, I have, because it is so moist, then the bedding that I find from outside, so whether it is the grass clippings, whether it is dried leaves, they tend to have worms, a different population of different types of worms in them. And we have a lot of slugs here. So because of that, I don't want those type of worms in my bin. They're composting worms, but because I'm selling my worms, I can't afford to have them in there. So in order to prevent the introduction of any form of pest or unwanted creatures in the bin, I get a large container and I put all of the bedding that I get from outside in there, boil water, cover enough to cover the bedding, and let it stay there until it gets cool. Once it has cooled down, not to the point where it is cold, because I'm going to repeat the process. So once it gets cool enough where I can actually strain it off without burning myself, then I repeat the process. Pour more hot water to cover the bedding. I cover the container so that all of the heat is trapped in there for as long as possible. And the reason why I do it twice, I used to do it once, and I noticed that I would still see creatures, and sometimes the top of the heat rises, right? So sometimes you'd feel the bottom of the container and it is cool, and especially like now when it is winter where everything that you're bringing in is cold. So when you pour the hot water on it, that coldness sap the heat. So it's not boiling water that is going on it the first time. The first time is just enough to bring it to a little above room temperature. Then when you do it the second time, that takes care of any creature that is in the bedding.
That's greatly explained. Thank you, because you educated me too. It's something that I've learned from your comments. So thank you for the
You're
reply for
welcome.
that question. So let's talk about you for a second again. What made you start uploading videos on YouTube?
Well, the first video I uploaded on YouTube was on a different channel, and we went fishing, and it was the biggest fish we've ever caught. My husband caught it. It was a sturgeon, and they are endangered species. So you can only take them out of the water, take pictures with them, and put them back into the water. And it was a 4-foot sturgeon. So I uploaded it because it was so interesting, and the kids and their excitement. So that is how I got started on YouTube. But then as it
That's
relates
awesome.
to,
But it's ironic how you had. I'm sorry. It's
go
ironic
ahead.
how you had a fish, and then you got into worms. Did you catch the sturgeons off of a worm, or how did you catch the sturgeons or sturgeon, whatever you call that fish?
The sturgeon, no, I didn't catch it off a
Yeah.
worm. Um, that was the only video I uploaded for years.
Okay.
Yeah, I just did it because it was interesting, the whole experience. But then I started gardening, and it was a way of keeping track of what I am doing with my gardening in this cold country. And then when I started worm farming, because I realized that information was so hard to find, and just like me, where I'm constantly going there and looking for information and couldn't find enough information to keep me going, I had to do a lot of trial and error. So I started sharing my journey. And initially, it was just show and tell. It wasn't really about teaching. But as more and more people start to show interest and start asking questions, I realized that there was a need for more information. So that is how I got into teaching worm farming.
So I see, like on your channel, if you want to talk about some of your business, you have like, do you have like a community that people can connect with you personally, to get some behind the scenes, or how does your if someone wants to learn business about worms, what do you offer them, and how can they connect with you if they want to learn more?
Okay, so if someone wants to learn more about worm business, I help anyone who is either a new or an aspiring worm farmer. So if you are worm farming already and you want to make it a business, or if you're just getting into worm farming but you would like to make it into a business, or if you already have a worm business but you don't really know how to build it into a thriving business, then that is where my community, which is called Wormpreneurs, comes in. So on a weekly basis, you get instructions as to what steps to take on a weekly basis. So instead of giving scattered information, because information in this technological era is dime a dozen, right? But most of them are scattered information, and so you go to this person and you get a bit of information there, you go to that person and you get a bit of information, and then you have to struggle to see what information fit here. But it's not a step-by-step process where you can get started and work away from raising worms to making it into a successful business. So that is where this community comes in, where it gives you step-by-step guidance. You can reach out to me inside the community if you have questions. You can reach out to the members in the community, share your experiences, ask questions. If they have asked questions, you can reply to them. So the purpose of the community is not just to teach individuals how to make their business thrive, but it is to create a community where we support one another, because that is what we're missing a lot in this world. Support is not really there. Most of the time it is just for financial gain, but it's not that the person is genuinely interested in one another. So in my community, it's not about, the community is fairly new too, so it's not about to make money, it is about networking. Because when we support each other, unlike the world that teach you that you have to compete with each other, you can support each other, and as you do that, we grow together. We see better success that way.
That's good.
So
And to connect with you, they just go to your description, and is there a link that they click on, or how do they connect if they want to, get to you,
okay,
check
good
out your
question.
community? I forgot.
I'm going to put the link in the description now, if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so I just added the link to the description, to the Wormpreneurs community. If they want to become a part of it, it is a paid community. I should make that clear. Yes. There was a question on the screen just now. Do you know what that question was?
Trying to see it if it came up. Or if I see it come up in the chat, I will highlight it for you.
Okay.
Okay. But if it does not show, I'm sorry. Well, if the chat sees it,
Okay.
they can click on it, but I don't see it. I apologize. But
Okay.
here
There is
goes.
a,
Oops, let me go back. Here goes. Let's
I've been doing
see.
worm farming for
Maybe it's
5 years.
blocked. Give me a second. Let me go and change the setting. Let me just make sure you're not blocked the links. 1 second, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
I see a question here, a different question.
Okay, you should be. Uh, okay, try it again when you get a chance to. I think I allowed the links.
Okay. I don't really get to see the chat.
Okay, yeah, there was a.
I can write in the chat, but I don't really see. Well, let's see. Go over here. Okay, there we are. Okay. Someone said they hear you have to let chicken poop sit for a couple of weeks. Yes, because it is very high in nitrogen. So if you're going to be feeding it to the worms, it needs to be pre-composted first. Most animal manure needs to be pre-composted first. The only one that you don't have to pre-compost would be the rabbit manure because it doesn't harm your plants and it doesn't harm your worms. Because it is most animal manure is a very high nitrogen source, then it produces a lot of heat. And that is what you're trying to avoid in the worm bin. So, and this is one thing I usually tell people when it comes to any type of nitrogen source in your worm bin. It is something that you can use in winter to keep your bin warmer. But be careful of how much you feed and how you feed, because if you're feeding and you're putting a large amount that it produces so much heat that the worms have nowhere to go, then it becomes a problem to your worms. But if you're feeding in small quantities that will produce heat but not make the bin too hot, then it will work. And if you're using that method, pocket feeding is a good practice, because when you pocket feed in one location, the worms can move to other locations if the bin is too hot.
Iowa Viking, he says he has been doing worm farming for 5 years now, and just started my business going to sell at the farmer's market in my town. And what he did, he asked me a question, and I says, maybe you want to go to like your local chamber of commerce or something to find out how to do a business plan. But I want to connect with him to find out what his method was. But do you have any tips on how to get started if you want to sell worms, how to start your business or anything, or anything like
Yes.
that? If not, go ahead. I'm sorry.
One of the biggest challenge that most worm businesses face, and you will hear a lot of people tell you that they tried worm business and it did not work out. Some of the
Yeah.
biggest challenge, one is they start a business without identifying who their ideal client is. Now, worms are in demand, and the demand for worms is growing significantly. But no matter how good a product is, if no one knows that your product exists, then they're not going to come to you to buy from you. So, before you even start a business, the first step, the very first step is to identify who you're going to be selling to. And sometimes when people are thinking about who they're going to be selling to, they have a long list. Fishermen, I'm going to sell to the farmers market, I'm going to sell to gardeners, and they think about everyone that they can think of that is good. But that is only the beginning. What you
Okay.
want is a narrow niche. So, not trying to sell to everyone, but just one or two niche where you can have the time to focus on your ideal client. Because when you know who you're selling to, the content that you create, your ads, your marketing strategy, your packaging, everything depends on who you're selling to. So therefore, if you're going to have 5, 6 different type of people selling to, you're going to have to create content for each of them. And let me tell you, it is time consuming,
Mm,
because one, you have to tailor your presentation to meet the outcome that the person wants, because people don't buy products. If you go to the doctor and the doctor tells you, okay, you need to take this prescription and this is how you take the prescription. You didn't go to the doctor because you want a prescription, did you? You go
no,
to the doctor because you want to get better, right? So the
that's
outcome is
right.
what you want, not the product. The product is what
Mm,
gives you the outcome. So when you are tailoring your content to meet your clients, it has to be tailored to the outcome that they want. So it's not about the features of the products, it is what outcome the worms give you, the worm casting give you. That is what you tailor your presentation, your content to. So if you are going to have multiple ideal client, then the effort that you have to put into create content for that fits this person outcome, that person outcome, becomes time consuming, and you end up working on a lot of projects at once but not making any of them steady on the market. So what I usually recommend, each year choose 1, 2, or 3 products and their ideal clients, build those products, make them stable on the market. Once they are stable on the market, and you still have to keep promoting them, you never ever stop promoting your products. You have to promote those, but once they are stable enough where they can sustain themselves with you just doing promotion from time to time, then you start thinking about adding more products to it.
That's great information. Thank you for taking time to share. That's really helpful. So another question for you. I don't want to know where you got your worms from, but when you sell worms, how many worms do you need to sell? I mean, how many worms do you have to be able to sell to the customer? That's a huge thing because 5 pounds ain't going to be enough. You know what I mean? So, what is your starting rep point?
That's a good question. And I take a different approach from most people where this is concerned, because most people tend to give you a number of worms that you need to have to start selling. Now, my approach is this industry is growing. You want to be in the industry, making a name for yourself before the industry is fully utilized, because the sooner you get in, the bigger your market share, the more known your brand is, which means that you are going to be among the first names that come up when people go online to look for worms. You are going to be the first person among the first set that people refer when they're looking for worms. So therefore, don't look at the volume of worms that you have. The most important thing to consider is to get started now, as soon as possible. But here is one important thing. No matter how much worms you have, and if you're going to get started, make sure that half of what you have is what you're selling, and the other half you leave for breeding. Because if you start selling the breeding stock, you're going to run out. And you're going to have to buy worms to start building your stock again. So let's say, for example, you have a pound of worms. If you're going to be selling, half pound is what you can sell from. You cannot sell from the other half. That is your breeding stock.
That's
So,
good.
and then in addition to that, why when I say start now, even if you have
You you froze for a minute. We'll see if you come back. You should, but technology, it's good when it works. But while she's buffering, I'm going to copy the link, and I found out where her um link is to her channel for the business community. So I'm going to post this link here. And if you're interested in finding out about her business, this is the link right here. So while she's buffering, chat, if you have any questions, just leave them in the chat box and we'll get to them. But she is from Canada. I live in Iowa. She's a state and a half ahead above me, so I don't know what her weather's like. But today we are it's 12 degrees. We're getting some snow, but if you want to let me know what is the temperature in your community. Yeah, she's buffering. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a little giveaway to my monthly membership. So let me gift a few memberships to people. 27, okay. All right, Iowa Viking. If you want, we can get together in the future, like hopefully next month, and we can do a live stream and you can share your information about your business. You don't have to be on screen. We can just do a pre-recording, just do maybe voices only. But you just let me know what your thoughts are, because I really want to hear how you got connected with your business. Because once again, that's great news. So thank you for sharing that, and congratulations on your business. Let's see. I'm gonna give five memberships.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm gonna give
Okay.
five. I'm gonna give five memberships, so you can always come check out the content. My members only, but yeah, you buffered for a while, so hopefully you got a membership from me.
Yeah, the problem I'm having is we are going through a stormy season, so a lot of winds and stuff, so it's interfering with the internet at the moment. But yes, as I was saying, sorry about that, but as I was saying, when I say start with what you have, most people think in terms of selling by the pound. But what I say is, if you are not
Hmm.
able to produce enough to sell by a pound, start selling in small quantities, like 100 worms, 150 worms, 250 worms. You sell what you can sell and you keep the breeders. When you don't have the, enough worms to sell, then you either have to wait until your supply increase, or the other option would be to purchase from someone who sells worm at a cheaper rate than you. And sometimes, hear this, and a lot of you might not agree with it, but what you want to do when you're in the initial stage of building a business, the most important thing is consistency. People need to know that they can rely on you. So even if you're not going to be making a profit, as long as you're
Okay,
not making a
I'll
loss,
try.
as long as you are not at a loss, you can purchase worms from someone and sell it for the exact price that you buy it from, just to keep things moving. Because what you're doing in the initial stage is building a brand, building a reputation, because your reputation is what is going to sell your business. So, yes, it's a lot of work, and you might wonder, I'm not making anything, why do it? But you're trying to get a footing in the market, and that is the most important thing. And starting small, a lot of people say because there is, you're not,
So you're buffering, and I'm buffering a little bit.
okay.
I'm sorry. What are you getting wind in Canada right now? Because that's how it was for me last. I can't speak. My last live stream it was just like that, but my side was not good, and this side was great. But so you must have bad weather. Like, is it windy where you're at today? Sorry
Yes,
to
it is.
interrupt, but it's letting you know.
Yeah,
Okay, but continue. I apologize. Just letting you know we were just buffering.
yeah, yeah. So start with where you're at. And a lot of people, because they don't have a lot of space, they tell themselves that they cannot get started. But there are many people who start, and they don't really have a lot of space. They're starting with one single shelf, maybe just one bin. But the most important thing is
Okay.
to be consistent, because worm farming business is a marathon. It is not a sprint. So don't expect that you're going to start now and you're going to be profiting and you're going to be growing very fast. The most important thing during the first 2 to 3 years is to learning the system, learning the principles that works. Because when you work out those things, all of the problems with the business, then when you are ready to scale, then you already know how to grow your business. So the focus initially is on learning the step-by-step process. And one of the challenge that I faced when I started my worm farming business is that I didn't have a system. I was doing this, I was doing that, I was doing that, but there was no, what would I say, consecutive workflow then. So I know that, okay, I'm supposed to be doing this first, then I do that next, and then I do that next. So I have a steady system that I am working with. The only reason why I have a steady system now is because back in those days when I got started, there was no one online to give me direction as to what to do. So I made a lot of mistakes along the way, a lot of trial and error. In fact, for the first 6 years in my worm business, I struggled immensely. I remember changing my setup 5 times in
Oh
just four
well.
years. You know how expensive that is?
Yeah, I hear you.
And then sometimes you go online and you start, as more and more people start posting what they're doing. You go online and you see this person doing that thing and this person doing it that way and that person doing it another way, and you try to do everything that they're doing. It doesn't work. It is good to learn from multiple people because they present different perspective. But at the same time, if you're going to be trying everything all at once, you don't get to know what is working. So if you see maybe this person come with this method and another come with another method and you want to try both, try one. Test it,
Okay.
see if it works, and then you move on to the other to see if that works. Because if you're testing multiple at the same time, you're not going to know which method is working. And when you're faced with problems, you don't know how to solve the problem because you didn't know what was working and what wasn't, because you're doing everything all at once.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, thank you. So, why can't a person take like six things at the same time? Why is it only one? Because one, you'll be overwhelmed, wouldn't you? And you got to find out. Just throwing it out there. But so, why do you recommend one thing over the six things at one time?
Everybody have a different method of doing stuff. It doesn't mean that their method is wrong and yours is right. And
Yep.
what I always tell my clients, anything that I give you is not a rule, it is a principle. When you take the information that I give you, you decide what you're going to do with it. If you apply it, you can see success, but your circumstance and mine, they're not going to be the exact same circumstance. We will have a lot of similarities, but they won't be the exact, which means that when I share a tip with you, it is up to you now to take it and to tweak what I shared with you to fit your specific
Right.
situation. It is just like choosing worm bin. Sometimes people come online and they ask me, okay, what worm bin do I choose? Whether it is for the personal use or for the worm business, what worm bin do I use? And most people would say,
Right.
okay, use the mortar trays because that is what everyone else is using. This is what I use and it works. But what I say to people is whatever you're doing, consider your circumstances because that is what is going to make the difference. The reason why I changed my setup 5 times in 4 years is because I wasn't considering my circumstances. I was just doing what I see others doing because that's the only thing I knew. But when I start consider my circumstances, for example, if you're choosing a bin, are you able to lift?
That's
Because if
right.
you're going to be using a tote and you cannot maintain the tote in the position that it is kept consistently, and you cannot harvest from it in that position, you're going to have to lift it. So if you're choosing a bin, you're going to have to choose, am I able to lift the bin? Am I keeping the bin inside my house? If I'm keeping it inside my house, where am I keeping it in the house? Is if visitors come and visit, what are they going to see? Is it aesthetically pleasing? So the
No.
point I'm
Yeah.
making is whatever you're doing, you must consider your specific situation, and whatever you're learning, you tweak it to fit your situation. And
That's
now
right.
if you're trying multiple things at the same time, multiple methods, as I said before, you will not know which of them is working because some might be working and some not working. But because you're doing everything together and some is working, it might make it seem as if they're all working. You don't want a situation where you think everything is working because when a problem arises and you don't know which one was working, whereas that one would have been the solution, now you have to go through each of them individually to find out which was working. When if you had started one by one initially, you would have saved yourself that trouble. And if you're doing worm farming, and
That's right.
especially
That's what I wanted to.
if you're doing worm farming, and especially if you are doing it as a business, here's one thing I'm going to strongly recommend: keep a record of everything that you do.
Mm.
Keep a record because personally, I'm scatterbrained.
Me
I'm
too.
scatterbrained. I have so much on my plate that I don't have time to remember a lot of things. I don't have time to. So, because of that, I have to keep a record because sometimes I might be looking after one bin and I say, okay, you know what? Time to go make the dinner. And so I run to make the dinner and say, When I go back in the worm farm tomorrow, I'm going to do this. I'm going to remember that this bin was from here and it had this issue and this was the solution. You know what? The next day when I go back, I don't remember what that was. So when you keep a record, you can always go back to the record to see what is happening, what problems you face, how you solve the problem, what's working, what's not working, when something was done. So keeping a record is very important when it comes to your worm farming business. And here with something else, because of legal consequences, having a record help, because people, some are genuine, some are malicious. And if
Yeah.
they're malicious, they can say, okay, I got these castings from this company, and this is
Mm.
what happened to my plant. Now, when you have a record of how you produce your castings, if there's legal consequences, you can say, here is my record. And then they can go back and say, okay, this is what happened to my plant. This is what happened to my plant. And then you can go back and fix it.
That's some good information. I know the weather kind of like messed up your connection, so we're buffering in. But viewers, chat, this is how it was for me last month. My live stream was buffering, and Will's stream was good on his end, and that made it a challenge for both of us.
Okay.
Oh, but okay, you go ahead. I was just talking while you were still buffering. But you said to definitely document everything just to cover your behind, which is great information because a lot of people don't think of that. She froze up big time. If anyone's in the chat and got any more questions, just leave them for us real quick, and we'll try to get to them as many as we can before this chat ends. But if you're interested in being on the chat, reach out to me, and we could be on a live stream within the next. I try to do a live stream every monthly live streams. I'm going to do a members only on the third of the month on Mondays at 7 p.m. Central Time, and the third of the month on Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Time. The members only is going to be more just laid back Q&A, talk about anything. But the other live stream, the Thursday PM live stream is going to be focused on having guests up and strictly worms and gardening. So like it says, if you're interested in becoming on the live stream, reach out to me. Another thing, if you haven't already, check out YT's Worms and Garden YouTube channel. If you like the content, subscribe. You know, if you want to learn more about business, connect with her through her entrepreneurial class to help you get started. But it's just awesome to be able to connect with people that share their knowledge. And as you can see, these live streams are laid back. I just ask you simple questions, no gotchas, and you just share what you want. If you don't want to share, you can always plead the fifth. But yeah, it's just an open community where we can get to discuss and learn from each other, grow, and support each other's channels. There she is. I hear you, but I don't see you. There she is. Peekaboo! Peekaboo!
I'm hiding. I'm hiding.
Yeah, yeah. We'll chat for a few more minutes on how the buffering is. This making it miserable for you.
Yeah. Well, teach your patience.
Yeah, like I said, I experienced it last month, and it was like I was the one getting stressed out. But we got no control over the elements. Mother Nature's going to do her thing, so that's just how life is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, a question for you, real quick. Do when if I was going to start a worm business, and you said you should, like, say I had a pound of worms, and I split it 500, half, half a pound each.
Mm-hmm.
Should that be in breeder bins, or is that in totes? What is your thoughts on a breeder bin compared to a tote?
Good question. And there are multiple ways of looking at that. Now, when you use a tote, a lot of times the worms tend to be smaller because it is a larger population of worms in one space. Whereas if you're using multiple breeder bins, then you can control how much worms are in the breeder bins. They're only going to be in the breeder bins for 3 weeks, 21 days. And then you take out the adults and you either let the content of that bin remain in the bin and the cocoons hatch and grow out, or you transfer the bedding with the cocoons to a larger bin so the worms can grow out. Now, if you are someone who is restricted for time, using a tote system would work better than using trays. Because when you use tray, that means multiple bins you have to maintain. Whereas if you have a tote, you can feed it, set it, and forget it for 2 weeks, and it's fine. Whereas if you're using trays, they tend to dry out faster because they're shallow and they don't have covers. And because of the amount of them, you have to maintain them on a weekly basis. So think about your circumstances, as I say again, because that is going to determine how you proceed. Now, I'm going to share something that I learned with you, and a lot of people may find it controversial, but this is actually something that I've proven to myself. Now, constantly you hear the question, how much worms per square foot? And they will tell you 1 pound of worms per square foot of surface area of your bin, which means that if you have a tote that is 2 square foot surface area, according to that rule, you can only raise 2 pounds of worms in it. But that is an incomplete statement. Why I say that? If you think about the next rule, they always tell you worms stay in the top 2 to 6 inches. The reality is, wherever there is food and moisture, the worms are going to go. So if you have food and moisture in the entire bin, the worms are going to be top, bottom, sides, everywhere in the bin. Wherever food and moisture is, that's where your worms go. So if you are raising your worms in things like totes and you don't have a lot of space to set up your worm business, then increase the volume of the bedding, not the food scraps, the volume of the bedding in the bin. Fill the bin with bedding. And then you feed the bin with nitrogen source just as you would if you had had a little bit of bedding in there. Just at the rate that the worms can eat the food scraps, because they're going to be eating the bedding as well and they can spread out. Worms need space to multiply. When they don't have enough space, they are smaller in size and they restrict how much they reproduce. So therefore, if you have limited space and you want more worms, more bedding. If worms if worms stay only in the top 2 to 6 inches, and it is 1 pound of worm per square foot of surface area, then say 6 inches, 1 pound of worms. So every square foot, 6 inches, 1 pound of worms. If you have a bin that is 2 feet tall, it means that within that square foot of surface area going down to the bottom of the bin, that's 4 pounds of worm as opposed to 1 that the rule of thumb tells you. So therefore, if you are thinking of multiplying your worm population with limited space, that is how you do it. So the pound per square foot of surface area is not true. It is only part of the fact. So it's not that it's not true, it's only part of the fact. So more bedding, but not more food. Never more food than the worms can eat at any given time, because your bin is going to become anaerobic. It is going to get stinky. It's going to attract pests, and it's going to overheat and harm your worms.
It's great information. And I like that, how you busted that myth about the square footage. And like you said, that's another way to look at it too, because I'm thinking maybe someone just said that to make it easy for someone not to really overthink things. But I
Mm-hmm.
like the way you said that you can always have more worms in a certain square footage of a container or whatever your worms are in. So thank you for sharing that knowledge. That's really great to hear.
You're welcome.
So I have to ask you another question.
Mm-hmm.
What was your biggest struggle when it came to your worms? I mean, how did you kill them? Instead of, other than like you said, you had them all the way in the food scraps and no carbon. Have you ever had them freeze or anything else that happened to your worms?
Yep. Uh, what year was that? I think it was 2021 or 2022. I was still living in Saskatchewan at the time, and the garage was an old garage. You can look straight outside from all corners of the four doors. And whoever built it with I don't know if it is the person who built it or someone later decided to put heater in there, but they just put the heater in there. They didn't have any vents transferring the heat around the garage. So the vent was open and it was just shooting air in one corner. And unfortunately, that is the
Oh,
corner where I had my worms.
oh no.
And so the heat would be at the top of the building, but down below was very cold. So one year it got so cold, the coldest I've ever seen it in Saskatchewan, minus 55 Celsius.
Wow.
And my garage is detached. And to
Okay.
walk from the side door to the garage was about 10 feet. And I'm black. I'm built for heat, not for cold. So when they tell you, now when the temperature reach those levels, they tell you, you will see it on every weather channel. You have 5 minutes or 5 seconds or whatever before you start to freeze.
Yep.
No, I'm terrified of the cold.
Yep.
So 2 weeks of that minus 55 temperature,
Oh,
I wasn't going outside. And I keep
yeah.
saying, I need to go and check on those worms, but I was too terrified of out there to go. so so I didn't go out and check on them for 2 weeks. And then I said to myself, you know
Oh,
what? I don't think they're gonna make it past 2 weeks.
yeah.
So I went into the garage and looked at them.
Mm,
And
yeah.
14 of my bins that were on the lowest shelf, 14 of them froze
Oh
solid.
man.
Yep.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
was a big blow. 14
Yeah.
of them. But when I saw them, some of them, there were more that were partially frozen. So I wanted to see what would happen. So I took the ones that were frozen and the ones that were partially frozen, and I put a heater in there and put them in front of it and let them gradually thaw out. Some of the worms did survive.
Oh, that's cool.
Most of them did not, but
Yeah.
thankfully their cocoon survived. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was a big blow because at that time I had
Oh,
70 bins. So to lose 14 was really hard.
that's awesome. Sorry to hear about your worm loss, but thank you for sharing that story. That's really awesome to hear. Yeah, the cold weather is definitely something that'll kill your worms, and if it's extreme heat. But yeah,
Mhm.
you shared a lot of great information. And is there anything else you'd like to share before we end the chat, or you know, because you're a great person. I'm glad to meet you face to face for the first time.
Thank you. Yes, there is one thing that I would like to share. Whether you're thinking of starting a worm bin or a worm business, sometimes we hesitate because we're telling ourselves we don't know enough and what if we fail or but my advice, get started, learn along the way because there are so much information available these days that you don't have to go through the trial and error. And I'm going to say one thing else. Now, when I started out, especially as my worm business, because when I started worm farming, there was no one to help. There wasn't someone you could pay to teach you anything. You had to figure it out. When I started my worm business, the same thing applied. There wasn't anyone in the worm farming industry that could teach me how to do the business. So I had to figure it out for myself. But there are certain aspects of the business that I could not figure out on my own, and it did not relate to worm farming. So I had to pay to learn those things so that I could run my business more effectively. And the reason I'm saying this is because if you realize that you cannot do it on your own, Don't be afraid to invest in yourself. The reason why it took me so long to get my business up and running where it is doing well is because I keep telling myself I don't have the money to pay to get the training that I need. And I keep coming up with excuses. But the moment I decide, you know what? Instead of spending how many years trying to figure it out on my own and lose my footing in the industry while everyone else around me who are starting is growing past me, why not make the sacrifice, do the investment? Because what I'm investing in is my future. So even though it might set me back initially, get pay for the courses that I need and grow the business faster. So don't be afraid to invest in yourself, because think about
Right.
my worm farming business. It took me 6 years because I had no help to reach to the point where the business is doing okay. Do you want to spend 6 years trying to get your business where you want it to go, or your worms, if you're just doing worms for personal purposes? Do you really have the time to sit and wait? Because if you think about the benefit that you're getting from your garden when you raise your own worms, if you're sitting and waiting to start your worm farm, then it means all those years your garden is going to be struggling without the worms, which
That's
means that the food
awesome.
that you're supposed to be producing for your family, you're going to be producing less. And the same thing goes for your worm business. If you wait to get started, it becomes more difficult. It costs you more. So don't hesitate whether you're going to figure it out on your own, or you're going to pay to get help so you can go faster. Whichever option you choose, don't hesitate. Get started. The sooner, the better, the faster you start to see result.
That's awesome. And the thing I like about that too is, free things are good, but like you said, sometimes we have to spend money to invest in ourselves. So don't expect everything in life to be free, chat, because everything is not free. Like she said, invest some of your own personal finances to grow better and educate yourself so you'll be successful in the worm farming business. But yeah, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave your information in the description box, and I'll put in the comments so you can check out Whitey, check out her channel. And then, like I said, if you want to join an go ahead, go ahead. You go.
One more thing for those who are in that initial stage where they want to learn worm farming and they want to be a part of a nice gardening community, I do have a free community that you can join. Yes, but we don't share business information in that community. But yes, you can join that to learn more about worm farming and gardening and to be a part of the family.
And that's on Facebook as well because I'm in your community.
Okay,
So,
okay, yeah.
so what I want you to do, I want you to end this live stream with how you end your videos. But thank you for, yeah, man, you know what I'm talking about. I want you to end it. Since this is your show, you're going to end this. But thank you for being a part of this community. I'm glad that we've grown and got to know each other, and you're
Yeah,
just a
it
great
was
person once again. I just can't say it enough.
it
So on
was
that
fun.
note, let's end the stream, and you bring it to the let's go ahead and park the ship.
So thanks for having me, AJ. Thanks for everyone who participated in the show. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have yourself a wonderful day. Yeah, man, a time for growth.
Amen. Hey, you have a great day. Thank you once again. Bye, you. Bye, chat.